This city is completely cut off from the world. An 80-kilometer steel wall surrounds the city. Automated machine guns and the army lock down any living thing that gets too close. Anyone who tries to escape the quarantine zone is shot dead without mercy. In 2008, a deadly epidemic breaks out in the British city of Glasgow. Those infected with the virus go insane, then their bodies rot, and they die. The most terrifying part is that this virus spreads extremely fast, and its method of transmission cannot be identified. Research for a vaccine is hopeless. Within a week, thousands are dead. The government is powerless, only able to ask citizens to quarantine at home. However, that's just a lie from the government. The officials and the elite have secretly evacuated. Civilians who try to leave are gunned down by soldiers. A little girl's eye is injured by shrapnel. In the chaos, her mother begs a soldier to save the child. A soldier, unable to bear leaving the girl in this hell, gives up his evacuation spot for her. From then on, the inside and outside of the quarantine wall become two completely different worlds. The government has built an 80-kilometer-long, 30-meter-high, steel-reinforced quarantine wall. The surrounding area is filled with landmines, and the airspace above is declared a no-fly zone. Not a single living thing can escape. Those inside can only fend for themselves, dying either from the virus or from the lack of resources. Eventually, scenes of cannibalism even appear inside the quarantine zone. Civilization and social order completely disappear. Time jumps to 2035. The little girl, Sinclair, who was lucky enough to escape the quarantine zone, has become a battle-hardened female operative. Her injured eye has been replaced with a high-tech prosthetic eye, which not only has surveillance and recording functions, but can also be used as a reconnaissance device, serving as Sinclair's powerful ally in many dangerous missions. However, Sinclair always carries a lingering regret. Her mother, whose face she has almost forgotten since their separation. Her mother left her a letter with a name and an address. But the quarantine zone has separated them forever. Mr. Nelson, Sinclair's former superior who watched her grow up, feels great sympathy for her. He advises Sinclair to take a leave, but she refuses. This time, Sinclair once again completes a mission to bust a human trafficking ring. However, during the inspection, the Special Forces team discovers many people infected with a disease showing symptoms identical to the Glasgow virus from years ago. The government takes this matter very seriously. Perhaps soon, London will also become a dead city like Glasgow. Some officials suggest a home quarantine first, and if the virus truly spreads, they will evacuate. But Mr. Nelson believes doing so would be repeating the same mistake. They must find an effective countermeasure to prevent the disaster. Just then, the Prime Minister secretly shows Nelson a document. It turns out, for all these years, the government has been monitoring the quarantine zone with satellites. From the satellite images, they have discovered that there are still survivors inside. This means the people in the quarantine zone may have found a way to fight the virus, perhaps even developed a vaccine. If they can just infiltrate the quarantine zone and bring back the results, they could save everyone. Mr. Nelson scolds the Prime Minister for knowing about the survivors and only revealing it now. The Prime Minister retorts that only when disaster strikes, and he appears with the survivors and the vaccine, will he become a savior. Knowing the situation is urgent, Mr. Nelson doesn't argue further. He directly orders Sinclair to lead a small team on an infiltration mission. He knows Sinclair has been waiting for this day for a long time. Before leaving, Sinclair receives information that Dr. Kane, the scientist who was researching the virus when the quarantine was established, is also trapped inside. If there's a vaccine, it's very likely he developed it. Sinclair takes a helicopter to the quarantine wall to meet her team. She doesn't know that a war is about to break out in London. The Prime Minister and the corporate syndicate behind him have decided to release the virus to eliminate the lower classes. Sinclair and her team, after checking their vehicles and equipment, enter the quarantine zone with 2 virus experts in 2 armored vehicles. The gate, sealed for over 25 years, finally opens. Although they are all seasoned warriors, they still feel a sense of unease. They notice numbers painted on every house in the city. These numbers represent the people who were waiting to be rescued, but in the end, they received nothing, as the government had long abandoned them. They quickly arrive at St. Andrew's Hospital in the city. They plan to start their investigation here, but the inside is silent, with no signs of survivors. Just then, Chandler, who stayed behind in the armored vehicle, notices their equipment signal is being jammed. When he turns around, he sees the image of a girl on the monitor. Chandler hurries out to check and finds the girl is very weak, so he brings her back into the vehicle. At the same time, the Special Forces team inside the hospital is attacked by survivors. Though their equipment is poor, they fight fiercely, and their numbers grow. Sinclair can only lead her team in a temporary retreat. However, the situation is now beyond their control. Chandler, driving the lead armored vehicle, is attacked with a firebomb, and the vehicle erupts in flames. As he focuses on dealing with the attack, the girl he rescued silently approaches him from behind and slits his throat with a dagger. Before dying, Chandler pulls the pin on a grenade, dying along with the girl. The first armored vehicle is destroyed. The second one drives into the hospital's basement. Sinclair fights her way back and finally gets into the second vehicle. However, just as the vehicle emerges from the ground, survivors shoot the driver from above with a crossbow. The second vehicle loses control and flips over. Everyone scrambles out to face the enemy. Despite their superior firepower, the survivors in the quarantine zone seem to have completely lost their fear of death. Except for 2 members who manage to escape, the rest are captured after running out of ammunition. Sol, the leader of the survivors, chains Sinclair up and tortures her for information. He wants to know which faction Sinclair belongs to and where her modern equipment came from. Sinclair, knowing these people have lost all humanity, decides to tell him she's from outside the wall. Unexpectedly, Sol's reaction is very strange. It turns out, for all these years, Dr. Kane had been telling them there was nothing worth exploring outside. This is the first time Sol has learned that people still exist outside. He had many friends who tried to approach the wall, but were all killed by flamethrowers and automated machine guns. He figures that if Sinclair can get in, she can get out. So, he decides to spare her life, intending to use her as a key to open the door to the outside world. Sinclair's other teammates are not so lucky. They all become a meal for the survivors. The survivor's life is quite rich, featuring not only entertainment like acrobatics and fireworks, but also brutal torture. However, what excites these survivors the most is a barbecue feast. Sinclair's captured teammate realizes his fate. The rage in his heart makes him spit at the survivors, but as the flames rise, only his screams remain. While the survivors are having their barbecue, Sinclair is looking for a way to escape her prison. A guard brings a plate of roasted meat, preparing to let her taste her own comrade. Seeing this, Sinclair uses her right hand to rip the chain from the guard's ear, forcing him to open the door, and then knocks him unconscious. Another guard, still studying a watch he just looted, is knocked out by Sinclair before he can react. But as Sinclair is about to sneak away, a girl in another cell calls out to her. Sinclair initially ignores her, but stops when she hears one sentence. It turns out the girl's name is Callie, and she is Kane's daughter. She can help Sinclair find Kane. As Sinclair is about to open the old door, Sol's girlfriend arrives. She is clearly a seasoned warrior herself, but perhaps due to malnutrition and lack of professional training, she is ultimately killed by Sinclair. Afterward, hearing that Sinclair and Callie have escaped, Sol erupts in a furious rage. Sinclair leads Callie and 2 surviving teammates to a train station, but their tracks have been discovered, and they are relentlessly pursued by Sol's forces. Sinclair jumps off the train to provide cover, waiting for everyone to get on board before leaping back on at the last second, leaving Sol and his men behind. Sol stares blankly as the train departs, then angrily kills his own subordinate. On the train, Callie says she can help Sinclair find Kane, but she doesn't want to see her father. It turns out Dr. Kane is now the leader of his own faction. He tells everyone there's nothing worth exploring outside, his goal being to maintain his dictatorial rule. The sadistic leader, Sol, is actually Kane's son, Callie's biological brother. Later, Sol and Kane had a disagreement. As Kane became more unpredictable, Callie sensed the danger and left him, only to find that her brother had also become brutal, which is why she was imprisoned. As they talk, the train quickly stops in a remote mountainous area. They enter an air raid shelter, which is filled with supplies, obviously gathered here intentionally. After passing through the tunnel, they enter a forest. Just then, a teammate spots something unusual and tells Sinclair to run, but Sinclair chooses to stay. Soon, several knights on horseback charge out. Sinclair and her teammate decide to surrender. In reality, with guns in their hands, they could have fought back, but Sinclair believes this is the fastest way to meet Kane. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to find him in the deep mountains in a short time. Callie tries to hide, but is eventually caught. They are all taken to Kane's castle. Soon, Sinclair and the others meet Kane. She is eager to know the answer to their survival. Is there a vaccine? But Kane says there is no vaccine at all. The reason people survived is due to natural selection, survival of the fittest. Those with natural immunity survived. He believes that in this chaotic era, the immune are the chosen ones, while those who cannot resist the virus should be eliminated. Sinclair is baffled by Dr. Kane's transformation. Kane explains that from the moment the government built the quarantine wall, everything changed. Since then, Kane has been filled with hatred for the outside world and doesn't want anyone to take away his power. He knows the outside government is surely monitoring the quarantine zone, which is why he chose to build his base in this remote mountain area. To prevent information from leaking, he decides to execute Sinclair. Sinclair thinks she might not escape this time. Entering the quarantine zone was probably a mistake. But in reality, the outside world is also in chaos. The virus is spreading wildly, even reaching the Prime Minister's office. An infected person nearly touches the Prime Minister and the tycoon Canaris. Fortunately, Nelson shoots the infected person just in time. However, the Prime Minister still meets a tragic end, as the infected person's blood splatters on his face. Seeing this, Canaris orders the Prime Minister to be abandoned. With the Prime Minister dead, the entire ruling class of Britain begins to fall into turmoil. Inside the quarantine wall, Sinclair faces her execution. It's a medieval-style duel, with the difference being that her opponent has armor and weapons, while she is barehanded. It's an unfair fight, meant only as entertainment for Kane and the survivors. However, Sinclair doesn't give up. She uses her agility and movement to injure her opponent, but her bare hands are no match for armor. So, she finds an opportunity to leap onto the stands and snatch a weapon from a guard. Now armed, Sinclair is like a tiger with wings, finally using her agility to kill her opponent. Kane is furious at this sight and immediately orders Sinclair's execution. Unexpectedly, at that moment, the entire castle begins to shake violently and then collapses. It turns out Sinclair's teammate hadn't abandoned her. He took the opportunity to kill the guards and escape the prison with the virus expert and Callie, while also causing this massive explosion. An archer tries to shoot Sinclair while she's distracted, but luckily, her teammate spots him and shoots the archer with a pistol. They reunite, steal some horses, and flee at full gallop. Kane's men relentlessly pursue them in a horde. Sinclair and the others find a new vehicle in an underground bunker, a brand new, limited edition Bentley. Next to it are several cans of gasoline. Everyone is overjoyed, refueling the car while searching for other useful items. Sinclair even finds many brand new mobile phones in their boxes. Just as they are ready to leave, Kane's men arrive. Sinclair's teammate sacrifices himself, getting hit by an arrow while providing cover. Sinclair is heartbroken, but now is not the time for grief. She drives the luxury Bentley out of the bunker, finally escaping Kane's territory. Once outside, Sinclair uses a looted Nokia phone to call her superior, Nelson. She tells him she has retrieved the vaccine and is on her way back. Nelson also reveals the situation outside to Sinclair. The virus has spread, the Prime Minister is dead, and Canaris is now in charge. Canaris, hearing the news, prepares to personally welcome Sinclair. However, Sinclair is intercepted by Sol. Sol's gang continuously pursues the Bentley, while motorcycles attack from both sides. Sol manages to jump onto the Bentley and engages in hand-to-hand combat with Sinclair and the others. Just when Sinclair and her group can't seem to shake Sol, one of Sol's henchmen drives a bus to block the road. He intends to stop Sinclair's Bentley, but at this point, Sinclair holds nothing back. She crashes the Bentley straight into the bus. As a result, the bus is torn in half, while the Bentley is unharmed. Sol dies in the collision. Soon, Sinclair meets Canaris. She hands Callie over to him because Callie is immune. Her blood can be used as a sample to develop a vaccine against the virus. However, Canaris has no intention of starting research immediately. He says he will only step forward when everyone is desperate, so he can become the savior in the people's eyes. As for those already infected, they can be left to their fate. The virus expert is furious with Sinclair for handing Callie over to Canaris, but both he and Callie are powerless and have no bargaining power. They can only be forced onto Canaris's helicopter. Afterward, Canaris tries to recruit Sinclair to work for him. With such a super soldier on his side, his future path would be much smoother. But Sinclair refuses and drives back into the quarantine zone. This time, she has no mission. She returns only because she remembers the address her mother left behind, wanting to see the place and its old memories, including a photo of her and her mother as a child. Mr. Nelson, knowing Sinclair would definitely come here, finds her. Sinclair gives Nelson a recording. It turns out, Canaris's words were all recorded by Sinclair's high-tech eye. By releasing this recording, Nelson can overthrow Canaris. But Sinclair will surely face Canaris's revenge. She has thought this through. She decides to stay in the quarantine zone and will return when everything has settled down. As for surviving in the quarantine zone, Sinclair isn't worried. She carries Sol's head and walks alone into the survivors' territory. These survivors have formed a rigid social structure. Sinclair killed their leader, so Sinclair is their new leader. Perhaps under Sinclair's leadership, these survivors will have a different future. And that's the entire plot of the post-apocalyptic movie, Doomsday. So what do you think of this movie? If you liked it, comment 111. If you thought it was just okay, comment 222. Thanks for watching our video. Goodbye and see you again.